Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So, guys, before we get going, many of you have probably come to EEA, and maybe some don't realize we have an original channel, which was Evolutionary Energy Arts. And so, at one time, this was around. Well, actually, if you go back about 3 years ago, we had about almost 67,000 subscribers. And since one particular video came up, and it was touchy on the whole plague upon the land thing, and they demonetized after a year. They affirmed that demonetization, saying that they will not allow us to run ads. But we also had 2 strikes, and we've had tons of material removed from Evolutionary. But now we're finally able to post there again, carefully.
Yes.
So please do subscribe, as we will be putting daily videos up on Evolutionary as well as EEARTS, and they'll tend to be a little bit more towards the sensitive topics on Evolutionary, as was my original intent, and more of the mysteries and spiritual side towards the EEARTS. And we do want to thank everybody for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. And this is something I wasn't going to talk about. Let me make sure yes, we're good. Thank you, Peter in Poland. We get so many people recommending, check this out. Something told me, check this out. And yeah, this is a perfect example of how there are higher powers out there that really are helping us.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that people need to understand is that it's almost like 2 contradictory things. You have the Star Trek non-interference thing, but at the same time, you do have these entities out there that really, they don't want to see a planet get destroyed.
Right. They protect life. They protect source life.
Yes. And this is where our thinking is, and as far as our thinking, the majority of the way that the planet thinks is not in line with our reality, because we're living under a system that wants to hide the benevolent beings from us.
Right. We live under a system that wants to take total control over everything, over all of the entities, all of the source energy, and manipulate it to work for them. But there are other entities out there who do respect source energies and source wanting to express itself.
So this is from third phase of the moon, and this is from Into Thin Air. And they're basically showing the same thing. And Into Thin Air, it took third phase of the moon's work and kind of ran with it and got into a little bit more depth here. And it's just fascinating, because this is not an artifact, this is not a glitch. We asked the guides, and so what is happening is, basically, you're looking at an object right here. You can see how this is almost perfectly spherical, right? And it looks like light is shining off there. And then here, this looks like a bow shock, doesn't it? It looks like a sonic blast, and this is what I was picking up and Cindy was confirming, is this is some sort of sonic technology that goes out and literally changes trajectory of a comet that's going by. As we know, we had a Christmas comet, Comet Leonard. And what you're looking at here, this is the Earth over here, and this is Venus over here. And this comet comes through, and it's like they alter the trajectory of the comet. So, this is getting into star map. You watch this, and I don't want to play it because I don't have permission, but I did want to share it so you can see this comes through and it's wavering, and all of a sudden it gets pulled down. It gets pulled, like magnetically pulled away from Venus. And again, this is where we want to tell you guys that you got to understand The control system has given us so much disinformation that if you almost go the opposite route of what they tell us, then you'll be probably closer to the actual truth than if you went along with what they tell us.
Yeah, it's like everything is upside down and inverse.
Absolutely. And we were going to talk about that on a video I was planning to do before seeing this, talking about the Nephilim and the Watchers. And we'll be hopefully getting that done today or tomorrow, because we had some really interesting information come across from our guides, the 6 mothers, well 7 now, that channel with us, and it was really fascinating. Again, what we have to get across is the fact that yes, many people now are awake to the fact that they don't believe what the mainstream media is telling them. That's a start.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll still believe in the science, quote unquote. They'll still trust in maybe what, well, I don't know, maybe most of our people I know don't trust in Never a Straight Answer, NASA. But still, the overall science, many people will just assume is correct. As to, you know, simple things like, well, do we have 8 or 9 planets? You know, how many planets are actually in our solar system? You know, of course, Pluto's status has been debated. But in reality, there are planets that are just outside of our frequency. And this is the case with Nibiru and many other planets that are really close to us and that do have a lot of life on them. Life is abundant in our solar system. And it may just be on what we would call lower 4th D, mid 4th D, 5th D. For instance, I'll share with you guys that there is currently off the coast of Sarasota, Florida, still a 5D city. And Siesta Key Beach, which often is voted one of the best, if not the best beaches in the USA, part of it's that quartz crystal, but it's the high vibes you could feel there. And this city is right off that coast, and it's still occupied by 5th density beings. So you got to realize, again, think of a radio channel with our reality. You tune out one station, another station comes in. And when we look to Venus, for instance, what we have gotten is that it is occupied. There are people on Venus.
Absolutely. You know, the difference is like the beings in Venus are very much like us. They're very much like us, but they're have a better understanding. They have a deeper understanding of source life. There's creatures there. They have pets like we have, like dogs and cats. There's creatures that look much like horses. A lot of the things on Venus, you know, as far as the greenery as well. A lot of the beings on Venus are very much like us, and except for they're at a higher vibration as far as loving source and understanding source energy and understanding that everything is one.
There's a reason why we equate Venus with love and Mars with war. Mars has been under the Anunnaki Gigian system, under the Draconian system, and it shows, you know, on the surface of the planet. It's obviously, you know, has not been well cared for, and is maybe not quite as scarred as Nibiru, but pretty much close to it. And there are still beings that are on Mars to this day under the surface, and they're still doing their mining. And this is part of the reality that we have to realize. Now, there are many different beings all around us at all times, many, many different beings on all different densities. So what was going on here was an act of protection, as this massive, massive ship, that's really, you know, what else can you call it? It's actually probably larger than the Earth or Venus itself, comes along and changes the trajectory. Because remember, this was up here, and then it looks like it's going to make almost a direct hit, or at least get close enough to where it can negatively affect Venus, and it's pulled away from it. And this thing is enormous. You know, talk about a mothership. But there are many motherships out there, and there are amazing beings with advanced technology out there. And we're not just talking about the Anunnaki or, you know, the Gigi. We're talking about beings with much higher technologies and a much higher purpose as well. So, you know, I do encourage you guys to check these out. What's fascinating too is this symbol is well known, and when you watch these, you'll get a better feel for this. This thing that comes from behind the Earth goes in front of the Earth, sends out a shockwave, and then pulls the comet into a different orbit. Now, they were aware of this. The peoples on the planet were very aware of this technology, because when you look at it closely, it resembles this, very, very much so. And so here again, we see humans and we see an Anunnaki here. And you see there's a being that's moving this. This is representing humanoid beings moving this vehicle. And this vehicle is there to protect the life on not just Earth, but, you know, other planets as well. And many beings, this is one of the things that might perplex us, do have the ability to travel up and down through different densities. As we've shared with you when we were in New Mexico and we were in deep meditation, and we had gotten done communicating with Laurel, our contact with the Galactic Federation, I looked up just reflexively up towards a cloud, and then I saw a ship manifest, and then it disappeared. And that was Laurel. She was just letting herself be seen to us. But we've also been on the ship in our light bodies at times. And, you know, this is part of why we say that when we look down on the Earth, it appears to be roundish or spherical. Although in reality, it could be a holographic projection, but it appears very real.
It does, yes.
Absolutely. And the Galactics have even described it like, you know, going to a theater. Like if you go to, like, say, an IMAX theater and you see it and you almost feel like you're being pulled into it. And yeah, the screen, I forget if IMAX are concave or convex, but, you know, the screen has a curvature to it, and if you're looking at the Earth on that screen, it does have that round appearance, even though it may very well be just something that's holographic. But not to digress too much, you could see what they're telling us, you know. Now, this doesn't mean that the Anunnaki are controlling this thing, because, again, the Anunnaki are fourth density beings, and it's interesting, too, because, like the Gigi, their higher selves are still fourth density, whereas many human beings, our higher selves, are much higher density, fifth density, sixth density, seventh density, even with some.
Right. You know, it's really hard to say when you're dealing with someone where their higher self might be, because beings want to come down here and express, different beings want to express themselves in different ways. So I always wonder, you know, like when we look in the Bible, it does say something about you never know when you're entertaining an angel. You really don't know who you're entertaining.
No, exactly. And again, there's so many misperceptions, which we're going to go over in the book, in the video that we're going to do on the Watchers and the Nephilim. Again, about what is an angel, what are fallen, quote unquote, angels. Because if you're believing the Abrahamic point of view, you're believing CNN. You're believing MSNBC. You know, you're reading and believing the New York Times or the Washington Post, because that's what it is. It's the mainstream point of view that the controllers have orchestrated, and you're not understanding the deeper picture. And when we look to the eight-pointed star, here you see astrological origins. There's so much different symbology. Find it interesting that here we are at the winter solstice, and it symbolizes the four corners of space: north, south, east, and west, and time, two solstices and two equinoxes. Pretty interesting, and it's not just coming from Sumeria. It's a universal symbol mentioned in Islam, you know, in the Greeks, the ancient Greeks as well, and they associated it with Venus. But we get associations with Venus and Astarte and Inanna and Asherah. Interesting, is it not? And then we have the seal of Melchizedek, which is an eight-pointed star again. And the guides have said that the whole Melchizedek thing has been basically twisted and distorted as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it has been. It's a very ancient entity, and it has been utilized for not good, even though there is much good in it.
Yes, yeah. So many things originally were good, but then they twist them. They distort and twist them. Just as we've talked about, the mission of Yeshua, who most of the world knows as Jesus, was one of teaching the ascension mysteries and getting us ready to get out of the dark age. That was his mission. What did they do? They turned it into a blood sacrifice. It had nothing to do with blood sacrifice. And we still get people, there was a comment saying, you know, you need to develop a personal relationship with Jesus. And we have a personal relationship with Yeshua. I mean, we actually converse with him on a regular basis, and we've had past lives where we've worked with him. So, you know, we understand who he really is. And, you know, he is, again, a great messenger of the potential that lies within all of us, and a great teacher. And it's interesting, too, because here you see somebody talking about how the ancient cultures believed stars were gods. And yes, you know, the stars, the planets, these are consciousnesses. They are very high consciousnesses. In most cases, they're beings that are supporting a lot of life. This is how it kind of works, in that the more in service to others we go, we are moving up the vibrational scale. And we can choose to become angels, so to speak. And what does that really, really mean? You know, the original Greek word means messenger. But in reality, an angel is somebody that's totally in service to others. It's all about supporting life, supporting souls' growth out there. And so when we're talking again about, well, if you're bringing in the concept of a fallen angel, then that's simply a being that's encasing themselves in flesh in order to help others. It's not a negative connotation. Now, the controllers come in and make you think fallen angels are demons. And again, demon originally came from daemon, which was basically a benevolent nature spirit, if you go to the original Greek. So again, we have to wake people up, and we are waking people up, and others are waking up to the fact that the controllers are giving you all this misinformation to constantly get you viewing the world from the viewpoint that they want you to view it from.
Right. It's very important to them, because that's how they remain in control. That's how they keep their position in society. As long as you are believing the story that they're putting out, they are in control. So just keep in mind, when we hear from entities like CNN, MSNBC, you know, everything that we've grown up with, you know, even the Bible, all of these things have been handed to us from a very young age in order to keep control of us.
Absolutely. Keep you in fear, too, and keep you bowing down and giving your power away to them. And so, you know, interesting, every Christmas we put a star on the Christmas tree. Well, some do, to represent Christ. And Christ, again, means anointed one. What is that anointing? It's the anointing that comes when the Kundalini is activated and your pineal gland starts to actually function, which is happening to many people on the planet right now. And this is why they're going to see through all the illusions and the BS, and they cannot live with the controller's lies. And it's interesting, in Revelations, Christ is referred to as the morning star. And then, of course, the morning star has also been equated with Lucifer. What does Lucifer mean? It means light bringer. What's light? Light is gnosis, it's knowledge. The sun gives us its light, it hits our DNA, and it changes us in a benevolent way. They get us terrified of the sun. They've had us slathering on very harmful chemicals on our skin to protect us from getting burnt by the sun. Whereas it's all about really keeping the light, the gnosis, the knowledge, the information that the sun is trying to give to us, which is coming from source, ultimately the true source of all, you know, the real benevolent source of all that there is. They don't want that. They want us just taking their information. So they want us being terrified of that which is good. Mm-hmm. And they've distorted everything in this world. And many are waking up to this. But it's interesting too, because Yeshua is in some cases, associated with Venus and the morning star. Well, there's also a reason, because we've gotten that he enjoys working with people on Venus. And the people on Venus, again, Venus has been many times associated with goddess energy, and that divine feminine as well. And yes, it is in many ways a much more peaceful planet than the Earth finds itself, and also most definitely Mars with the warlike energy. And that's no offense to the actual consciousness of the planet Mars, but it's what's been done by the system of those that have come and raped, robbed, and pillaged the planet.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's really fascinating to see all this. And again, check out the Kardashev scale, because this was a Russian scientist that came to maybe some channeled information. Maybe he wasn't knowingly channeling it and was just deducing it, but he talked about, what exactly would these different civilizations be able to do as they were around longer and longer periods of time, acquiring more and more knowledge about how things work. How does this universe work? How does the multiverse work? Well, it'd be all about being able to control energy and to utilize energy. And there's different types of scales. There's different classifications of civilizations. And we rate currently at 0.7 of a type 1 civilization. And so, we're basically infantile in many ways. And you have to recognize that there are beings that have been around through countless more incarnational cycles and understand things so much more than we do. And there are beings that don't even have to be too benevolent. We could look to the Anunnaki, for instance, and certainly they're not really in service to others. They're very, very much in service to themselves. However, we do have to realize, just as we look at humanity, there's always saints and there's always sinners, so to speak. There's always those that will, in any race, any species, have inclinations of wanting to help others, maybe a little bit more than some others of the same species. You could run into the same thing in the animal kingdom as well. But when you get up to a certain level, you would not only be able to control all the energy on your planet, but also on your solar system. You would actually be able to move planets, to move suns, to move entire solar systems, perhaps even to move entire galaxies as you go on up higher in the technology. And this is what we definitely do have. And it's fascinating to note, as you see a little picture here of a Dyson sphere, which would be something that would be constructed around the sun to harness the power of the sun, that there is a Dyson sphere piece of art out there on the Vatican property. What does the Vatican know? They know the whole thing. You look to Pope Leo, who said, hundreds of years ago, this myth of Christ has served us well. And that doesn't mean that there wasn't a real being on whom everything is based, because there was, and his name was Yeshua. But their storyline is a myth. It's not it's not what really is, for one, what really was his mission, and exactly what really happened. And again, there's a lot of different clues, as we talked about. You could go back to the famous, gosh, what was his name? The guy that did that whole series of the Anunnaki books. Sitchin, Zechariah Sitchin, right? And yeah, Sitchin, I don't feel had everything right. And, there's been allegations that he was also somebody in league with the secret societies. And, maybe not. It doesn't matter, because there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Sumerian scrolls, which are basically being interpreted by countless different people now. And, the storyline also is congruent with other cultures around the globe, all saying the same sorts of things. But, he called Nibiru the planet of the cross saint. And then we have the symbolism of the cross. And instead of being in balance and harmony with 4 equilateral arms, it is not in balance and harmony, as it's longer with the cross arm being shorter. And again, that shows the imbalance of the entire system and their way of thinking that we have.
Right. And as long as they keep us under their system, we are extremely imbalanced. We are way out of balance. We need to find harmony. We need to find that symbiotic nature with our planet, with those around us, with the animals, with the trees, the birds, something that we have always had in our past where we were symbiotic with everything. We could read the planet. We could read other animals. We had this pineal gland that worked very, very well. It's our antenna that reaches out into the ether and gets us information, does things like, tell us to make a left instead of a right, and that way you avoid an accident. So all of these things are very important, and unfortunately they have been cut off from us, but we're awakening to it now. As we move further into that photon belt, we are moving further into the light, and the light penetrates our bodies, and we start to ask questions.
So, the vibes off of this mothership is very Pleiadian.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, so this is, again, something that is more of the benevolent ones. And, of course, the Anunnaki themselves and the GG, and then, who are their controllers on Earth? Well, it's the puppets we see all the time, and the puppets behind in the shadows as well. The banking cabal and all the different groups, the families that are of EGG blood. They'll want to claim good things for themselves, but no. This is the act of a truly benevolent set of beings, and it's an act of protecting whole planets. So, yeah, and then the question will come out. Well, why didn't they protect us from the acts of the Anunnaki? And again, there is free will, and we are tricked often to give our power away. And many times you might be thinking you're doing something so benevolent and so good, like, hey, I'm going to go vote. I'm going to go vote. But you're saying you're acknowledging the system. You're saying, I agree to actively participate in the system when we do that. And then others will say, well, how can we change it if we're not going to vote? Well, we have to vote for something outside of the system. We have to, separate and say, we don't want this system anymore. That's the thing. We don't acknowledge any of these political puppets on strings, and we don't acknowledge, in fact, the entire system itself. So by getting ourselves out of the system, we can create breakaway civilizations, so to speak. And this has happened in the past. And this is also at times in the past what has happened when you have these stories of the Tower of Babel, where they do come in, and sometimes when they're able to, they will cause havoc and cause all sorts of chaos. Their modus operandi is keeping us fighting ourselves. As long as we're fighting ourselves, we won't recognize that they're the ones manipulating everything, so we do fight each other.
Right.
Again, it's very, very sick and twisted in so many ways, and so devious, but this is the ones that are truly in control, and their method and modus operandi. And yet here we are, and we have so much more potential than they do, because they are so stuck in their greed and self-centeredness that they can't touch where we touch, and they can't go where we can go until they have a change of heart and they themselves decide to come back aligned with the side of light.
Right. They need to release a lot of their material things, and they're just not willing to do that.
Yes. So again, thank you guys so much for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. We look forward to your comments on this. As always, please make sure you are subscribed to both channels and share. Namaste and much love.
Namaste.